Okay, yes, I'm in my pajamas. Yes, I just got a shower. I have filmed this 3 times and I'm about to give up. This is hard. So we're going to get into it. Viewer discretion advised. This contains graphic, horrible content, like horrible, and child abuse, child torture, sexual abuse against a child. Just graphic content. So if this isn't you, just keep scrolling. You know, there's other videos, there'll be more videos, but this is Crime and Claws, and this is what is about to happen. So let's get into it.
Okay, guys, so we're going to get into the story or crime of the torture mother. This crime took place in Indianapolis, Indiana in 1965 and was known to be the single worst crime perpetuated against any individual in Indiana's history. So, we are going to start with Gertrude Benichowski. Gertrude Benichowski, also known as Gertrude Wright, she was born 1929 as Gertrude Van Fossen. Little was known about her childhood except the fact that she was never close with her mother. She was only ever really close with her father. She was a daddy's girl. She had People described her relationship with her mother as frigid, and it didn't get better when she turned 11 years old. She actually watched her dad die of a heart attack. So, watching her dad die of a heart attack, it just didn't help situation with her mom. At 16, she ended up dropping out of high school and getting married to a man named John Benichowski. Now, John was 2 years older than Gertrude, and they stayed married for 10 years the first time. And during that 10 years, they had 4 kids, and it was known that John beat Gertrude. His excuse for beating her was the fact that she annoyed him. Yeah, they, that was his excuse. She just got on his nerves, so he beat her. So they end up getting a divorce, and Gertrude gets custody of the children. Within a year of being divorced, Gertrude met and married Edward Guthrie, and he literally divorced her after 3 months. He said he got tired of just having kids around. So Gertrude ends up getting back with John, and they stayed together for 7 years this time around and have 2 more kids. But they end up getting divorced again. So after this divorce, the second divorce, she ends up meeting a man named Dennis Lee Wright. She meets him like right after she got her divorce from John, and they have her last and final child, Dennis Lee Wright Jr. But Dennis probably didn't like the kids either, or I don't know if there's something wrong with Gertrude. I don't know what it was, but literally, he abandoned her as soon as she got pregnant. He didn't stick around, he didn't have excuses, he just left. So during the time that she was with Dennis, she was said to have had 2 or 3 pregnancies, but because he also beat her, she only ended up carrying one to full term, which was Dennis Jr. She ended up having 1 or 2 miscarriages, and it was said because, it probably happened because he was beating on her. So Wright had been supporting her and the kids, but now that he's gone, she has to support herself and 7 children on her own. So she ends up going and getting child support from John, and it's just unreliable. The payments are not showing up on time. So she goes and does odd jobs around town, like babysitting, doing laundry, sewing, whatever anybody needs for some extra money. But the financial issues with Gertrude got even worse when her 17-year-old daughter, Paula, came home and told her that she was 3 months pregnant with a middle-aged married man. So at this time, Benichowski's health goes downhill really quick. She was chronically ill with a number of unidentified illnesses. She stopped practicing hygiene. She barely ate. After all of this stuff, being beaten for years, men not sticking by her, and having 7 children on her own, her mental health just declined really quick. And I mean, it almost make anybody go nuts to have 7 children and be single. I mean, that is just a nightmare situation, I can imagine. All right, so in July of 1965, Paula Benichowski, who is now 3 months pregnant and the oldest daughter of Gertrude, she ends up meeting up with a friend of hers, Darlene, who introduces her to 2 neighborhood girls, Sylvia Likens, 16, and Sylvia's younger sister, Jenny, 15, who was required to walk with braces due to polio. Jenny was born with polio, which made one of her legs weaker than the other leg. Paula took the girls back home on, well, it doesn't matter where. I'm not going to say a million different addresses and a million different names. Paula took her back home where they drank soda and listened to music and just hung out. So they get to talking, and the girls tell Paula that, their mom was in jail and they just had nowhere to go. So Paula's like, well, hey, just stay the night at my house. So, just a little backstory for Sylvia. Sylvia and Jenny were born to Betty and Lester Likens, a poor to middle class family that kind of earned money together. Lester was known for being a good father, letting his children be around at all times. They worked together. He enjoyed spending time with his kids and working with his kids. So, Betty, she and Lester had a lot of issues. They were on again, off again. And they had 5 children. They had 2 sets of fraternal twins and then Sylvia. So they had Diane and Daniel, the 2 oldest twins, and then Sylvia, the middle child, not a twin. And then they had Jenny and Benny. Jenny, which was born with polio, and she had to wear braces on her legs. Well, Sylvia was known for being a really good sister. She ended up going skating with Jenny when they were younger, and she actually took the time to put a skate on Jenny's stronger leg and helped her to skate around the skating rink. And this year, for some reason, in 1965, Betty and Lester were fighting more than normal, not fighting, but not getting along. And Betty decides that she's going to take the girls and she's going to whisk them away, and she leaves with them. But the worst part about it is Betty ends up going to jail for shoplifting. And I can imagine that parents don't just take risks unless it's really necessary. I don't see Betty, her being known as a good mother. I just don't see her just going shoplifting for the fun of it. She was probably doing it to either provide food or provide something for the girls. But nevertheless, she ends up in jail. And as a side note, Sylvia was also known for doing odd jobs around town, babysitting and stuff like that, to to give her mom the money to help so out. Lester, he ends up blowing into town because he wants his girls and he wants his family back. And how he knows, where they're at is because Betty's in jail. She might have called him. I don't know how he found out the town, but he finds out where they're at and he blows into town and he's looking and searching for the girls and finds a neighborhood girl who points them in the direction of Paula Benichowski's house. So Lester, he goes to the Benichowskis and who answers the door? Gertrude. Gertrude answers the door and actually introduces herself as Gertrude Wright. Like she married Dennis Wright, her youngest child's father. Nobody even knows if she ever really married the man, but we do know that she is going to say that just to sound respectable. So Lester is known for talking to Betty and telling her that he had a gig to join the carnival or the circus and travel the United States, but that he didn't think it was a good idea to be taking the girls. And the girls was usually staying with their grandparents or their older sister. So when he came to Gertrude's house, nobody knows who offered up the idea. I would imagine it was Gertrude. I would imagine that she was desperate for money and was willing to take in two more kids on top of her seven just to have the extra funds since John's child support or alimony just wasn't showing up on time or regular. She really needed the money. I would imagine it was probably her that stated, like, hey, I'll take your girls. Don't worry. Go travel the US. Go join the circus. Go run off to a fairy tale life, whatever. Just you go and I'll keep the girls. So they both strike up a deal that Gertrude is going to board the girls for $20 a week. And then Lester leaves.
So, like, what really bothers me is how Lester, he's known for being a good dad, and he really just trusted this woman. He did not look in that house. He didn't even try. Like, I don't know how she was able to hide it so well, especially when it came to, the smell. It had to smell. Like, what's up with that? What's up with that?
So the first week was known to have went well, with Sylvia and Jenny living with Gertrude and her seven children. They went to school, they went to church, they went to school and church functions. Everything seemed to be going well, and the $20 it showed up on time. But the next week, the $20 did not show up on time, and Benichowski threw a huge tantrum screaming at the girls, I took care of you two bitches for nothing, before forcing them to lie across her bed with their skirts and their panties pulled down to their ankles, and she beat them bare-butted. Shortly right after this happened, Lester and Betty Likens came into town to check on the girls, but neither of them said a word about what was going on. The next week, Sylvia and Jenny went through garbage cans to collect soda bottles and pop cans and get money for candy. When they showed up, excuse me, when they showed up to the house with the candy, Benachowski, of course, accused them of stealing it. And Sylvia, she was like, no, we didn't steal this. We collected pop cans and soda bottles and got the money and went and bought the candy. Well, Gertrude, she ended up going off and she was like, you're a liar, you're a liar. And of course, made her lay across the bed, pull her pants down, and beat her bare bottom with a paddle. This woman has a lot of nerve to hit another person's child. But anyways, the right after this incident, the kids go to a church function and Gertrude's kids come home and tell Gertrude like, "Oh my gosh, Sylvia was eating so much food. It was embarrassing. It was disgusting." So instead of like, you know, uh, like telling her, like she was okay. Gertrude was like telling her, like, how dare you do something to ruin your physical appearance, and like you're gonna get fat and ugly and da 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 da. And she takes a hot dog, and the hot dog has so many condiments on it. It has like mass amounts of mustard, mass amounts of ketchup, onions, whatever. And she forces Sylvia to eat it. Well, Sylvia ends up throwing it back up, and this just pissed Gertrude off more, just pissed her off. So she forces Sylvia to get down on the floor and eat up her own vomit. Here we go again. So the parents come back into town, but of course, they don't notice a thing. They don't see that anything is wrong with the girls.
Okay, so what really makes me mad about the parent situation is that, like, why would you talk to, like, isn't it uncomfortable to have a conversation with your two girls in front of everybody? Wouldn't you want to, like, take them off and kind of have some privacy, whether it's out by the road on the curb or just somewhere, anywhere? Like, why aren't you taking your girls off to the side and having, like, a real conversation with them? Like, what are you doing? Just staring at them in the house? And I'm not saying anything bad about her parents, but come on. Like, come on. You had to know that she was screaming in her head, like, someone please notice. Like, I know that she probably didn't want to bother her parents or anything like that, but I'm just mad at that situation there because, like, there's so many times in this story that this could have been prevented or she could have been saved, and, like, the opportunity is just totally missed. So that really makes me mad.
So, from everyone in court, it seems like the incident that really set everything into motion of treating Sylvia just horribly. Gertrude overheard Sylvia say that she once allowed a boy to feel her up. Gertrude burst into like a fit of rage. She ended up accusing Sylvia of being a prostitute and told everybody in the house Sylvia was pregnant because she had let a boy touch her and touch her down below. Gertrude ended up attacking Sylvia, repeatedly kicking her down below in her private areas. And, it wasn't just like meek little kicks. She seriously kicked her over and over again. When Sylvia went to sit down, Paula threw her out of the chair and told her, "You ain't fit to sit in chairs." From then on out, Gertrude would not let Sylvia sit in chairs without permission. And she ended up telling her kids to just use Sylvia as a living plaything. Play games, like beat her, push her down the stairs, do whatever you want to her. Just She's your play toy. So after kicking Sylvia in her privates, she and Jenny end up going to school and telling kids at school that Paula and Stephanie, the second oldest daughter of Gertrude, were having sex with boys in exchange for money. When Stephanie's 15-year-old boyfriend, Coy Hubbard, went to school and kids were like, "Hey Coy, send your girlfriend our way. We got some money. Ha 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 ha." You know. He got so pissed he went to Gertrude's house and beat Sylvia. Just beat her. And this ended up like Gertrude saw this and she was like, "Yes, I need an assistant. I need somebody to help get this girl under control." And she ended up taking this boy on as, like her assistant to torturing Sylvia. And she told him, "You can practice your judo on her." So he was known for doing body throws, kicking her in the head, punching her in the face, just beating on her every day after school. As a way to get back for Sylvia and Jenny going to school and saying that about Paula and Stephanie went to school and told Sylvia's best friend that Sylvia had been spreading rumors about her mother and brought the girl back to the house to let her beat up Sylvia. And then also, they went to school and told the girl that introduced them to Paula that Sylvia was calling her mother a prostitute and a whore and all this other stuff and let her come back to the house and beat on Sylvia.
So, if I remember right, there is this thing called mob mentality, where if like one person is doing something totally horrible, they can get other people to do it too, and it's more accepted. And it, for some reason, it just makes people act a lot less, like a lot more inhuman, doing horrible things, kind of like a lynch mob or um just gang violence. It's easier for you to give in to animal instincts and being cruel if other people are doing it too. So I do know that there is like a real thing for, that mental state where you're literally just, doing horrible things, but because you're around other people doing horrible things, for some reason it's livable. And like they're just things that you wouldn't do normally on your own. Like these kids wouldn't probably normally just mutilate and torture somebody, but because there's other people doing it, and uh yeah, it's a whole mental state. You can probably look it up and find out. I don't know. I don't know if you can look it up. I just remember hearing about it somewhere. So yeah, this is looking cute though. Oh, this girl. This is like kept me awake trying to do this whole thing, and I don't know.
So one day, Sylvia comes home from school and tells Gertrude that she needs a tracksuit for gym. But Gertrude tells her there's no money for, a tracksuit. So Sylvia goes to school and steals a tracksuit, but she brings it back home and somehow Gertrude sees it. Gertrude questioned Sylvia about the tracksuit, and Sylvia finally gave in and told her how she got it. Well, this ended up sending Gertrude into a rage, and she ended up pushing Sylvia to the ground, repeatedly kicking her in the privates, before like screaming about theft and curing her of sticky fingers. She burned the tips of Sylvia's fingers with a lit cigarette. And then afterwards, she made Sylvia bend over while whipping her with a belt. After this happened, everybody in the house that smoked started putting their cigarettes out on Sylvia's body as a reminder for her not to steal. Shortly after this, Sylvia ended up going out again to collect pop bottles and cans and get money. And when she got home with the bottles, Gertrude seen the bottles and ended up accusing her of prostitution, telling her you was out being a prostitute. She made her take off all of her clothes in front of her sons, in front of the boys that were there from the neighborhood, ended up making her undress fully, ended up throwing her a pop bottle and told her to use it on herself. This little girl was 16 years old, and she is forcing her to use a Coca-Cola bottle on herself in front of these boys.
So I definitely really believe that Gertrude, having her dad die and not having that manly attention or fatherly figure, I definitely believe that, she had daddy issues and that's the reason she dropped out and got married and let him put his hands on her. And then, they get a divorce and then she gets with another man right away. They split up after 3 months and then, she gets with John again. And then, they split up and she gets with another man right away. Like, it's like she just needs that validation or to feel beautiful. And, after all of that failed, and here comes Sylvia, like, with this light inside of her, just inherently good, and people want to be around her. I definitely feel like Gertrude got jealous and Paula got jealous. And, that's part of the reason why she treated her so bad. Now, I don't think that if Sylvia would have never came along, I definitely feel like Gertrude would have targeted one of her kids or Paula. I'm not sure, but usually when people do stuff like that, it's not always like it's not 100% the person that they're doing it to. It's, it's them and they would have done it no matter what. So I just think that she was, seeing how disgusting she was, seeing how other people saw her as disgusting, and she took it out on poor little Sylvia.
So after the Coke bottle incident and the after, being kicked into privates over and over again as hard as possible, Sylvia became incontinent and she ended up not being able to hold herself when she needed to use the restroom. So she would end up urinating on herself. Well, this made Gertrude really mad. She ended up throwing her down in the basement, naked, and told her, "You're not fit to live with humans. You must live down here." There was no mattress. It was cold. It was dark. She was already not being fed. People putting cigarettes out on her body. Her being beaten by the neighborhood boys. Just this little girl. This makes me so mad. And so now they kind of have Sylvia where they want her. You know, the kids are seeing what Gertrude and Paula are doing to this girl, and they end up following suit. They end up charging neighborhood kids to come over and push Sylvia down the stairs, or they end up charging them to see Sylvia naked. And they were rarely feeding her. So when they would bring her food, they thought it was so funny to just give her a bowl of soup and tell her, eat it with your fingers. or to throw it on the floor. And as an extra treat, they told her, well, we'll let you clean the basement up, but you have to clean it by eating your own feces and by drinking your own urine, which they gave her a cup to be able to catch it with. So, ugh.
So it definitely bothers me when I hear people say, like, oh, but this happened to them when they was younger, or they really went through a lot. Everybody's been through a lot. I went to 13 different elementary schools, 2 middle schools, a junior high, and 4 high schools. I lived with a lot of people growing up, people that wanted me, people that didn't want me, and they made it perfectly clear. I've been through shit, and you don't treat people bad. You just don't. You learn from those things, and you you know you take that pain and you say, like, oh, I would never let this happen to anybody ever again. Or like, you become a police officer, a social worker. You take that pain and you turn it into good. That's a choice that you have. Or you can be evil and turn it into hate, and just prolong the bad. Like, I don't believe when people say, like, oh, well, this happened to her when she was little. I don't care. Like, you can have bad happen to you and then turn it around and go make good of it. It's kind of the reason that we're doing this series, is to show, there's a lesson to be learned, and Sylvia Likens' story can at least still have some good come out of it.
So Jenny ended up wanting to send for help, and she ended up seeing Diane at a nearby playground and told Diane what was going on. But Diane just kind of chalked it up as, like, they're just mad, they're getting punished, she's over exaggerating the situation. But later on, Diane ends up stopping by the house, and Gertrude answered the door and told her, you will not see the kids, you need to leave. So Diane ended up leaving and hiding in the bushes and waiting to see the girls outside. Well, she ends up seeing Jenny outside, but when she ran up to Jenny, Jenny told her, I can't talk to you, and ran off. Diane was kind of worried at that point, so she goes home and she called Children's Services. Well, a social worker shows up to the house, but when Gertrude answers the door, she tells the social worker, I know you're here for Sylvia, but she ran away with some really unpleasant boys and I have not seen her. Why the social worker did not go in the house to find out the truth, I don't know. I really thought that was like a protocol. I mean, maybe it is now, and it wasn't then, and that's why it is now. I don't know. But I do know that, this whole thing could have been avoided if, anybody would have freaking paid any attention. If the parents would have paid attention, if Diane would have paid attention, if the social worker would have just paid attention. All right, so on October 21st, Gertrude, we are calling her Dirty Gertie now because she doesn't deserve anything else. Dirty Gertie instructed Don Jr., Coy, and Stephanie to bring Sylvia up from the basement, tie her to a bed, and she told Sylvia that if she could hold her bladder through the night, she would be permitted to sleep upstairs again. I think she was scared that people were showing up to check on Sylvia, so she was going to kind of turn the situation around. But when she checked on Sylvia the next morning, she seen where Sylvia had wetted herself. So Dirty Gertie made her get dressed, then took her to the living area, and then again forced her to perform a striptease for her sons and neighborhood boys, and of course threw the Coca-Cola bottle at her. Like, ugh. After this striptease, they let her get dressed again, but then all of a sudden, after the boys were clapping and hooting and hollering, Gertrude, Dirty Gertie, said, or all of a sudden just remembered where the girls had went to school and branded Stephanie and Paula as prostitutes at school. So she told Sylvia, "You have branded my daughters as prostitutes. I will brand you." Sylvia was then again forced to strip naked, tied down, gagged, while one of the Banichowski children heated a sewing needle with a series of matches, and when the needle was orange, Gertrude used it to carve into her skin. I, well, in all, it was, "I'm a prostitute and proud of it." But she only got the I and M into her stomach when she instructed a boy from the neighborhood, Ricky Hobbs, to continue carving the letters. Hobbs, such an idiot, had to stop and ask Banichowski how to spell prostitute. So she wrote it on a piece of paper for him, and he just, continued his idiotic self burning the words into Sylvia's stomach. It left third-degree burns behind, and it was known then, like, it was so bad that even plastic surgery would have been unable to correct it. That's how deep they burned her. Oh, wait, though. So another one of the kids, yet, another idiot, went to go carve into Sylvia the letter S, but was so stupid they actually wrote the S backwards, so they carved a 3 into her body. That is how dumb these children were. So after this happened, they took Sylvia back down to the basement, and Jenny ended up sneaking down into the basement to visit with Sylvia. But Sylvia ended up telling her, "I'm going to die. I can tell." Shortly after Jenny visited her, Dirty Gertie went into the basement and brought Sylvia upstairs and allowed her to sleep in one of the beds. She was allowed to sleep until noon the next day, October 23rd, when Gertrude went to wake her. Once Sylvia was awake, Gertrude and Stephanie took her to the bathroom to give her a warm, soapy bath. After the bath, Benichowski, Dirty Gertie, and Paula dressed Sylvia and then dictated a letter to her. They told her to write a letter telling, this letter was supposed to make it look like towards Sylvia and Jenny's parents that Sylvia had ran away. So they told Sylvia to write, "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Likens, I went with a gang of boys in the middle of the night, and they said that they would pay me if I would give them something. So I got in the car, and they all got what they wanted, and when they got finished, they beat me up and left sores and on my face and all over my body. And they also put on my stomach, 'I am a prostitute and proud of it.' I have done just about everything I could do just to make Gertie mad and cause Gertie more money than she's got. I've tore up a new mattress and peed on it. I have also cost Gertie doctor bills that she really can't pay and made Gertie a nervous wreck and all of her kids. Yeah, that note sounded like it really came from a 16-year-old girl, didn't it? Like, what an idiot.
So, what really kind of hurts my feelings in this situation is that, like, you know that most of the time for the 3 months that Sylvia didn't, like, she had this hope in her that somebody would come and save her. Whether it was the neighbor, whether it was her sister Diane, whether it was her parents stopping in again. Like, she was probably just screaming inside for somebody to come and save her until she didn't. Until, like, she looked at Jenny and told Jenny, I'm going to die, and it's okay. How do you at 16 accept that you're going to die? Like, it just eats me up. Like, this has all just eaten me up. I can't even. This is just the saddest story. And I hate Gertrude. Hate her. If I could go back in time, I would probably tie her up, dunk her in hot water, and then make her eat her own feces. And then I would make her drink her own urine. And I would choke her within an inch of her life and then beat her again. Just because. I don't know.
Once once Sylvia settled down, Gertrude looked at her and said, "What are you going to do now with the brand on your stomach? Nobody's going to marry you. What are you going to do?" Sylvia told her, "There's nothing I can do, is there?" So, after writing the letter, Gertrude takes Sylvia into the kitchen and prepares her some toast. But Gertrude couldn't eat it and she couldn't swallow, and it's now known that it was probably from dehydration. She wasn't able to swallow because she had no spit to swallow with. So Gertrude took down the curtain rod from the kitchen window and beat Sylvia in the mouth with it. John then took Sylvia to the basement and tied her up while Gertrude prepared a plate of crackers. Hmm. When when John brought the crackers down, Sylvia told him, "Feed it to the dog. It's hungrier than I am." That's when Gertrude repeatedly punched Sylvia in the stomach before leaving her in the basement. The next day, October 24th, Gertrude came into the basement and attempted to punch Sylvia. First, she tried to hit her with a chair, but missed and broke it against the wall. Next, she tried to beat her over the head with a paddle, but swung such a wide swing that it just hit air, and it came back and hit her in her own face, blacking her eye. To stop the strange show, Hubbard stepped in and beat Sylvia unconscious with a broomstick. Over the course of the night and the next morning into the early hours of October 25th, Sylvia beat the basement floor with the scoop portion of an iron shovel. Next door, neighbors would later report considering calling the police, but chose not to. On October 26th, Gertrude voiced her intentions to give Sylvia a warm bath. Stephanie and Ricky brought Sylvia upstairs and laid her in the tub fully clothed. They took her out shortly thereafter when they realized she was not breathing. Stephanie gave Sylvia CPR, but by this time Sylvia was already dead. Benichowski instructed her children to take Sylvia's body to the basement and strip it naked. She then told Hobbs to go to a nearby payphone and call the police. When the police arrived, Banachowski gave them the letter she'd made Sylvia dictate. In the midst of the commotion, Jenny Likens whispered to one of the police, "Get me out of here, and I'll tell you everything." This statement, combined with the police's discovery of Sylvia's body in the basement, prompted the officers to arrest Banachowski, Paula, Stephanie, John, Hobbs, Hubbard, all of them, for murder. Other neighborhood children present at the time, Mike Monroe, Randy Lepper, Judy Duke, Cisco, they were arrested for injury to a person. So Gertrude and her children were held without bail, but charges against Cisco, Duke, Monroe, and Lepper were dismissed. Stephanie's lawyer got her a separate trial. Before it was able to begin, the district attorney dropped the murder charges. Meanwhile, an autopsy of Sylvia Likens turned up over one. Ugh. Ew, I'm so mad at this. I can't even talk. The autopsy showed Sylvia Likens had 100 cigarette burns on her body, in addition to various second and third degree burns, severe bruising, and muscle and nerve damage. In her death throes, Sylvia bit through her lips, nearly severing each lip. Her privates, the cavity was nearly swollen shut. Although although an examination of the canal determined that her hymen was still intact. So Gertrude was a liar. She was not a prostitute. She was still a virgin. A hymen is what causes you to bleed when you lose your virginity. So Sylvia was still a virgin. The The official cause of death was brain swelling, internal hemorrhaging of the brain, and shock due to all the lesions over the skin. In the case, the state of Indiana versus Gertrude Banachowski, John Banachowski, Paula Banachowski, Ricky Hobbs, and Coy Hubbard commenced in the May of 1966. They sought the death penalty for all involved. So all of them were tried together, and afterwards, pretty much, Paula was convicted of second-degree murder. She appealed and was granted a new trial, but before it began, she struck a plea bargain, pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter, served 3 years in prison. John, Hubbard, and Hobbs were each convicted of voluntary manslaughter and sentenced to 18 months in juvenile detention facilities. By the time the now 17-year-old Hobbs was released, the severity of his crimes had sunk in, and he had suffered nervous breakdowns and began a regimen of heavy chain smoking, which he ended up dying at 21 of lung cancer. Yes, go Karma. One for the home team. Gertrude appealed, was granted a new trial, and was again found guilty, though this time she was sentenced to 18 years to life because they had dropped the death penalty in the state of Indiana during that time. Even though they picked it up later on, they couldn't just change her sentence back to the death penalty. So, yeah. During one of Gertrude's parole hearings, she stated, "I'm not sure what role I had in it because I was on drugs. I never really knew her. I take full responsibility for whatever happened to Sylvia, though." Gertrude walked out of prison on December 4th, 1985, and traveled to Iowa under the name of Nadine Van Fossen. She died there of lung cancer in 1990. Ha! Another one for the home team. She only lived 5 years after prison, and again, another one dies of lung cancer. So exciting. I'm so sorry, you guys. I started on this trail or path of doing this, and I really thought that I could do good at it. And now I really feel like I just kind of dropped the ball on this situation. I don't know. This is the third time that I've done a set of nails with this story. And yet again, I'm not happy with how it's turning out, but I'm going to put it up because I give up. I can't go another week. I've went 2 weeks studying this case and going over the details and trying my best to do the story some justice, but at this point, I'm just exhausted. I can't sleep. I've got to just get past this situation. And it really bothers me that people like this would do this to such a beautiful young woman. So I will be doing this again, but I think I'm going to stay away from doing crime against children. It really, really bothers me. I can't, I just can't get on that level. I'm a very empathetic person, so I put myself in Sylvia's situation and I'm thinking about how she must have felt at that point in time, or, what's going through her head, or how much pain she's in, and it just eats me up. So I'm going to do my best to stay away from crimes against children, and hopefully this will get better. Hopefully. And I hope you guys, if you guys like crime and you like nails, then I definitely hope you subscribe and stick around because there will be more and it will be getting better and better. I'll get better. Just wait, you'll see.